Why don't more infant formula companies use organic, grass-fed whole milk instead of skim? Why don't more infant formula companies use the latest breast milk science? Why don't more infant formula companies run their own clinical trials? Why don't more infant formula companies use more of the proteins found in breast milk? Why don't more infant formula companies have their own factories instead of outsourcing their manufacturing? We wondered the same thing. So we made Gayheart, an infant formula company on a mission to get a lot closer to the most superfood on the planet, breast milk. Our patented protein blend has more of the important and most abundant proteins actually found in breast milk. We're the first and only U.S.-made formula to use organic, grass-fed whole milk, not skim. We even conducted the largest clinical trial by a new infant formula company in a quarter century, with clinically proven benefits like easier digestion, less spit up, and softer poops versus a leading infant formula. And we make our own formula in the USA and our very own factories in Iowa, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Gayheart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at gayheart.com.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast with the spotlight on section hikers.
And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, your premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers, and I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayheart. I'm very glad to have you all back for this week's show and episode number 10 in this summer's series titled Jester's Class of 2022 Section Hikers. I hope you all are following along with each of our class members and encouraging them along their journey out there putting in miles this year. So far, you've heard from Charlie Carpenter or Skyhawk, and Skyhawk at this point in his journey should be headed up to New Hampshire and Maine to continue his section hike on the Appalachian Trail. Next up was Carol and Debbie, who've been out section hiking on the Continental Divide Trail and sometime midsummer should be heading over to the PCT. Kate Stillwell, or Phoenix, is continuing her way south to Springer Mountain, Georgia on the Appalachian Trail. Then we heard from Celeste Queen, who continues clicking off miles out there on the Mountains to Sea Trail. Then, next up was Kelly McDonald. Kelly is headed to the Great Divide Trail for another section hike this summer, sometime in mid-July. Sarah Chappell, or Troubadour, is well on her way for her section hike on the Appalachian Trail this summer as well. Laura Finch, or Baby Cakes, is headed out in September to get some miles in on the Allegheny Trail in West Virginia. And Larry Haynes, or Lone Wolf, continues working on completing the state of Colorado out on the Continental Divide Trail. And last week, who you heard from, Benji, or also known as Doc, can probably be found on the Mountains to Sea Trail as we speak. To catch up on all the members of Jester's Class of 2022 section hikers, you could always go to the playlist link in the show notes of today's episode. And be sure to check out their guest bios attached to their individual shows to find all of the social media information so you can start following along. And this week, you're going to hear from Deb and Danny. So here's a little bit about Deb and Danny from their own bio. Deb and Danny started hiking the Appalachian Trail in 2011 by doing the Maryland section where they live in their state. They fell in love immediately with the trail, but only made time for one weekend hike a year, as they were avid long-distance triathletes and runners, which occupied all of their non-working hours. In 2020, when the pandemic shut down races, they headed over to the trail constantly. They bought new gear, watched videos of thru hikers, and started actively planning and hiking longer sections. They soon realized after 12 years of racing they didn't miss the races and preferred to be on the trail. Now, the AT is their passion, with the goal of completing the trail as section hikers over the next few years. They're about halfway done completing Amicalola to Hot Springs and about 60% of Virginia and Harper's Ferry, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and the Whites. This year's planned sections are Hot Springs to the Rhones in the spring and then likely the state of Vermont in September. Along the way, they have met and made friends on the trail, and the community is one of their favorite things. Even for section hikers, you can become part of the AT community. On trail, they're known as Sundial and Fiik. And just a heads up, if you have some little ones around, be forewarned there is some fun language used when Fiik is describing his trail name in this episode. Now it's time to get on with this week's show and hear from Deb and Danny. All right, you guys, welcome back to the podcast. And I have two familiar voices with me today that have been on the Hiking Radio Network via Mighty Blues podcast, but they're section hikers, so I had to bring them over here to the Jester Section Hiker podcast. And they are official members of Jester's class of 2022 section hikers. So welcome back to the Hiking Radio Network, Deb and Danny, or otherwise known as Sundial and Fiik. Did I get all that right?
I think I pronounce it Fiik.
Oh, Fiik. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
But that's good. I was
We'll have to tell you why.
Okay. So,
everybody else says, what was it, thick?
Okay, Fiik. I can get that. Okay, so let me do this again. I formally welcome Sundial and Fiik to the Jester Section Hiker podcast. Is that better?
I love it.
Excellent, excellent. So the listeners have gotten a little bit of a taste of what you guys are doing. And from what I can tell, your journey began section hiking back in 2011 with a little trip on the Appalachian Trail in the state of Maryland. So Deb, or Sundial, why don't you start us off? How did you guys begin this journey on the Appalachian Trail? Did you stumble upon it, or let us know what happened back in 2011?
All right. Well, first, I want to thank you for having us on the podcast. I absolutely love listening to you. I think you saved me during COVID on all the hikes I was doing. And I was just listening to you, and I was like, oh, my God, this girl rocks. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so, we have both been athletes our whole lives, and very avid in team sports growing up, and then triathletes and Ironman and marathons and that kind of thing. And in 2011, I was actually reading a real live newspaper that you held in your hand.
No.
Imagine that. And the only reason I even got a newspaper is because I'm a high school basketball coach and I needed the newspaper to get the box scores. So in the back of the sports section, under the outdoor section, there was this article from about Odessa and Jennifer Farr Davis and the book that she wrote, Becoming Odessa. So I was like, well, that kind of sounds cool. Let me read that book. And I read the book and I was like, Danny, this sounds amazing. We need to try this. And the AT in Maryland is about like an hour and a half at the most, I guess, from us. And so we did some research. We did some planning. We borrowed backpacks on that first hike, and we hiked from Penmar to Harper's Ferry, and we absolutely loved it. We loved the challenge. We loved the views. We loved the whole thing.
All right, so I'm going to ask Danny the truth. Okay, so you guys, I love hearing, and I've said this multiple times now on the show, I love hearing people's first backpacking trips because they're either glorious or a disaster or some kind of combination.
It was somewhere in between.
So Danny, yeah, tell us the truth. What was it like?
So Deb mentioned that we borrowed the backpacks. I actually borrowed one and Deb rented one. And when we got out there about halfway through the hike, Deb's backpack was just really bothering her hips. I mean, she was miserable, absolutely miserable. So we're like, well,
I don't remember that.
Let's swap, right?
All right, Deb says she doesn't remember.
But,
so.
I mean, other than that, we did swap the backpacks and everything seemed to work out. We were able to adjust them and get through the hike. But other than that one little glitch, when we got done, you would have thought we conquered the world. You know, it was as good as finishing a marathon, as good as finishing an Ironman. It was just a great accomplishment. We were like, we need pizza, we need beer, let's go eat. And it was only 3 days of hiking, so the challenge was definitely there. And I think that hooked us. Very physical, very challenging, and beautiful, and just a great time.
So when you got home, did you guys just go immediately into, because we're talking back in 2011. So did you guys go immediately into, okay, when are we going out again?
Right to REI.
Okay, so you went. Well, Deb, tell me some things you changed, like immediately before the next time you went out. Did you go home and say, okay, this cannot happen again, X, Y, Z has to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we rented initially and borrowed initially because we weren't sure, were we going to like this? And, triathlon is a crazy expensive sport, so it was dangerous to get into another expensive sport. But like Danny said, we were absolutely hooked. So we knew we needed gear, number one, that we had to buy gear, and number two, that we, had to get fitted. So, I got fitted for a backpack. He bought a backpack that he still uses. I used the backpack on the next section we did, and still didn't like it. And when, with REI's great policy, I went back, returned it, and got another backpack that I had up until a couple months ago. So I'm finally in an ultralight pack, but it took that long. We've been through several tents. I mean, like anything else, and again, you do the same thing in triathlon. You start with sort of the basics just to get you going. And as you learn more about the sport or the activity, you upgrade your gear. And so that's where we're at now. In the last couple of years, we've become, constant avid hikers. So now we have much better gear.
So this is interesting. I like to ask couples this. So I've had couples on the show that share gear. They stay in the same tent. And I've had couples on the show that are very independent. They do not, because one snores, one has some other kind of issue. So Danny, what couple are you guys? Do you guys share gear, stay in the same tent? Are you hammockers, or is everything separate? Or tell us the deal.
So up till recently, we shared gear.
Uh-oh.
And that's why we went through several tents, because Deb snores. I swear it's her. It's not me. But we tried sleeping head to foot, head to head. And I can only get kicked so many times a night. And we would be hangry at each other in the middle of the night. And before you know it, just recently we went out and bought single tents. We used those in our last hike. We didn't like it. So we just went and bought a tent that we had before, a Nemo 2-person tent. So now we both have 2-person tents that we haven't tried yet. So we'll see how a week apart in our own separate tents goes. But
interesting.
That'll be interesting.
Well, listen, let's get real. Between the snoring and the smells, things happen, and getting in and out of the tent, to go to the restroom, you're climbing, it's inevitable. You're not going to get out of the tent without waking the person up that's in the tent with you. So I get it. I can't tent with anybody else. Forget it.
It's true.
We talked about going to hammocks, and again, largely kind of you switching to hammocks. I was like, you know what? Let me listen to these podcasts, and so obviously, if we went to hammocks, we would be in our own hammock. So at the moment, we're more comfortable in the tent environment. So we were like, why not have our own tents? But the single person tent was like a
coffin.
That was like a coffin. Like neither of us like that at all. So we're back to the Nemo Hornet, and gonna try a 2-person tent, but for 2 of us, each of us, instead of both of us.
Yeah, that's going to be like the Taj Mahal for each of you.
But Jester,
right?
we also like Deb carries the cooking equipment, so she has the pot, and before I was carrying the tent. So until we both got our own tents, now we're like, well, how do we rearrange the cooking? Because we both don't have to carry a pot and a stove, right? So still trying to figure that out.
And that is true. That is true, to balance out the weight. So that makes sense. One of you could carry the stove. Now, do you carry the fuel? Do you guys split stuff up like that?
That's what we did last hike. I took the fuel this time because we both had these separate tents, right? And that seemed to balance things out okay.
So take us up through, so everything started in 2011. You guys are really dialing in your gear. And that's interesting, Deb, that you're thinking about a hammock too, because it's taken me all these years to really think about a hammock. and I'm just tired of being on the ground. So I'll keep you posted. I'm still testing it out. I don't know how all this is going to work because I'm still scared of trying to find trees and worrying about all that stuff. So I'll keep you posted.
All right. If you're successful, then I'll give it a shot.
All right. Sounds good. But so walk us through. So you guys were going year after year, maybe spending like a weekend or so. But it wasn't until it seems like a lot of us changed our styles of what we do because of this thing that happened called COVID. So walk us through what happened. I think your section hiking changed to more aggressive section hiking in 2020. So Deb, start us off.
Yeah. So, again, the Ironman and marathons, those were the priorities, and they were taking up between the training and the races, they were taking up every weekend. So we would get out for one long weekend a year, and it was usually in the fall. And, the nice thing about section hiking is you can kind of pick your weather and you can pick your spot and you can stay away from the bubble and, some of the things that thru hikers can't always do. But that would really be it. And every year, every time we went, we would say, we need to do this more. We need to get out here more. And in particular, we wanted to go do Massachusetts because that's where I'm from. And when I was younger, I lived at the foot of Mount Greylock, and I can remember all that. And we just didn't prioritize it because the races would take up the time. So when the pandemic happened, and obviously every race on the planet was canceled, and the safest place to be was outside in the woods, we just started hiking more and more and more. And we did, Danny's got a spreadsheet somewhere. We did so much hiking in 2020, and we started to realize we actually didn't miss the races. So when they came back in 2021, we were, we did it for a long time. So it was a great experience. We have great friends from it, but it kind of had reached a point where we were interested in other things. And that's what we've been doing ever since, is all that race weekend, that prioritizing hikes. So, we're about halfway through the AT and doing these longer section hikes now, and have the John Muir on our bucket list and a bunch of other things. So, that's where we really, like, when the racing stopped, we were finally able to really prioritize the trail.
Well, I heard spreadsheet, Danny, so I got to go to you. So talk us through now, Deb, don't take this wrong. Are you the more like, you have to have a spreadsheet, you have to be organized, you got to see what you're doing, or what's this spreadsheet about?
So I'm an engineer.
Okay, well, there you go. Never mind.
So the name Fiik is for a reason. All I do is follow Deb. She plans everything. She reads everything. She tells me what to get, what to do, where we're going. So when we get somewhere, I have no idea, right? So that my trail name is the if I know. You might have to bleep that out. And because everybody comes up and for some reason they want to ask the guy, hey, where'd you stay last night? Hey, what's your gear? What's your boot? I'm like, dude, if I know. Where are you going? I don't know. Deb, where are we going? And then I have Deb tell him what's going on. So I just follow along. The spreadsheet was just an easy way for me to keep track of all the hikes we were doing.
Excellent. And I love the trail name Fiik, because you know what? What is that with everybody asking gear? What do you carry? What's happening? What's going on?
I'm walking in the woods. My pack feels good. I'm good. I am good. So.
All right. Well, you've got the spreadsheet so you can keep up with Deb and kind of know what's going on. So we know how you got your trail name Fiik, and I'm saying it right. Yep. Is that right? Okay. So Deb, how did you get Sundial?
Well, so there's that constant debate, as you know, about, do you name yourself? Do you let, hikers name you? Well, when you section hike, and in particular, if you stay away from the bubble, you're not out there long enough to interact with somebody that they might put a trail name on you. So, when we first started way back in Maryland, Danny's last name is Mooney. And so he went by Moondog because that was the nickname growing up. And, we were doing a lot of triathlons, and I went by Tri Girl. And so those were our trail names initially. And then in 2020, again, when we started hiking so much, the Fiik thing came up. And then as far as the Sundial, Danny would, again, this was all because of planning. Like, I do all the planning. And so we would be somewhere and hiking along, and I knew how long we had been out there and how many miles and what pace we were doing. And he'd be like, hey, what time is it? And I'd be like, 3:08. And I'd be within 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
I mean, I without looking at my watch, I could tell, within 10 minutes. And so, at some point he said, God, you're like a damn sundial. And I was like, I like that better than Try Girl. So that's staying.
Listen, you know where you are and you know what you're doing. So there you go. I love it.
It took me to get there. I
love it. So I want to switch the conversation over just a little bit because I don't want to forget this, because I think what I'm getting ready to ask both of you is a vital component, not just the physical hiking, but why you love the AT so much. And that's the community, because I was able to meet you guys last year at the Alda Gathering. And one of the things that continues to draw me back into, the hiking community, the Appalachian Trail community, is the community itself. And I can feel that, and I can see that from you guys as well. So, Danny, why don't we start with you? You tell us how you guys are immersed in the community, because I know you do some trail magic and things too.
Yeah. Again, Deb does a lot of, she watches all the videos, she watches the YouTube, she watches it more than TV, right? So she knows.
I'm right, Deb, I'm right there with you.
She knows who's on the trail.
On
I mean, it's great watching, right? She knows who's on the trail, and she follows people up and down the trail and tries to find when they're going to be around Maryland, when they're going to be in Virginia, Pennsylvania, to go do some trail magic. And honestly, I basically follow along. It was last year. It was last year, wasn't it, Deb? So,
I don't know where we're going.
We did some trail magic. And we ran into, 5 or 6 people that in our section hiking we ran into up and down the trail. And they were just really legit people. And it was cool to run into them. Now Deb made a few friends, I think lifelong friends out of this, that we've hooked up with at Alda. And we actually stayed at one of their houses recently while we were going on our hike. And the people are just legit, especially people who either through hiked or in these long section hikes. They, don't expect anything from you and really want to reach out and give back to the trail community. So it's just been a blast meeting people. Like I say, they're all down to earth, fun people. You all got a common calling, being the trail. And it's a joy to run into them, and especially if they're through hiking and you run into them multiple times up the trail, it's a good time.
And Deb, why do you watch so many videos and follow the through hikers and immerse yourself, into the community as you guys are completing the trail as well?
I think in the beginning I was learning like anybody else, and so I was curious, and the YouTube videos were a neat way to learn about the trail. But then certain people, I guess, more than others, catch my eye. So the Suttons, of course, with Harvey, was just fascinating to watch this young boy do this. So we've become very good friends with them. And to meet Harvey and know that he was just this normal kid out there and they're normal parents, like it's, the accomplishment is amazing. But so I wanted to go out and meet them when they were in Maryland to do something special for Harvey and the family. And then there's another couple that we're staying with when we go to trail days. We're getting a house together. And I met them through Facebook. And they caught my eye because they were, number one, a couple like we are. And number two, an older couple. So a little bit older than us, retired. And that fascinated me to know, like, can this couple make this 2,200-mile journey? And so I kept reaching out to them on Facebook, and I would just say, hey, when you get to Maryland, when you get to Pennsylvania, I'd love to help you, blah, blah, blah. And it's Rhett and Scarlett, Gone with the Wind, if you know who they are. And he wears a very distinctive hat. She's got a very distinctive Southern twang. So we're in Pennsylvania. I know they're roughly around there, but we're not looking for them. We're doing a hike, and we're going, I guess, Sobo, and they're going Nobo. And I see these two people sitting on a rock up in front of us.
Oh my
and
God.
We approached them, and I'm like, oh my God, you're Rhett and Scarlett. Which was cool, right? And they turned around to me and they said, oh my God, you're Deb Taylor. And I'm like, how do you
it.
know who I am? And they're like, she said, Karen said, I have told so many people about this, this woman, Deb Taylor, who comments and wants to help us and has offered to do all this stuff. And, and now I have these, like Danny said, lifelong friends that I never would know otherwise. And, we're going to hang out at trail days. And so it's stuff like that,
Awesome.
Mischief, I've reached out to Mischief a lot. I'm hoping to help him when he comes in our area because his story is amazing. It's special. And to me, those people are inspiring.
Indeed, very special. And you're making me think of, different encounters that I've had with people on the trail. And it's like, oh, well, there's so-and-so. Oh, well, there you are. And it's like, how did we end up here?
Yeah.
It's incredible. So we are recording this a week before Trail Days in Damascus. And I know you guys are headed to Trail Days and you're excited about that. But you're also headed into a section hike. So talk to us about that section hike. Danny, you gonna be able to talk to us about it?
I might just want to fill in the details for Deb. I know we're starting in Hot Springs. Let me just say that.
Excellent. Okay, so you're starting in Hot Springs. Do you know where you're finishing?
Somewhere up the trail.
All right, Deb, how long are you guys going to be out on this stretch? Because you're going out twice.
Yes, I love my husband. He keeps me laughing. So we're gonna, we did the same thing last year. We timed it with, hey, we've never been to Trail Days. Let's go down and see what this is all about. And so we're doing the same thing. We'll get down to Trail Days. We'll spend Friday and Saturday, and we'll leave Saturday evening and drive to Mountain Harbor in the Roans.
Oh, yeah.
And,
okay.
Yep. And I've been talking to Dave there and looking forward to meeting him. So we have a reservation in the hostel that night. This is another example of community. The next morning, we're getting a shuttle down to Hot Springs. And then the goal is over 9 days to hike back to our car at Mountain Harbor.
Awesome.
We think we can hike more than that. So if everything goes well, we'll go past Mountain Harbor and then just get a shuttle back to our
Jester,
car.
that's why I didn't know where we were going. That's...
Well, listen, you know that stretch. I know you've done your research. You know that stretch is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. So you guys are going to be out in May doing that. And Danny, I don't even know if I can even ask you what you guys are doing this fall. So I'm gonna defer back to Deb.
I would say it's still up in the air. I mean,
okay.
But we were planning to go up to Vermont and do Vermont. So that was the original plan. But now we're kind of thinking going back down and picking up where we left off in the south. So however far we make it in the Roans, we may go back down there and pick up.
But what you do know is you're going back out again. So you'll be out in May, and then you're going back out again. Is it September or October?
It's like early to mid-September. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we'll go out kind of the same thing, like 10. Last year we went out, I think we were planning on 10 days, and we realized that we were sort of ahead of schedule, and if we pushed like 2 hard days, we could actually reach Fontana Dam, which is where we had left off in May. So we called into work and said we weren't coming in, and we added another 20-something mile day, and we got ourselves to Fontana. So we closed that whole gap, which was pretty cool.
Excellent. Okay, so now we got to get down to, so the goal of this is, for more section hikers to follow each other, for us to encourage each other and cheer each other on when we're going out on our section hikes. So we need to know where to follow you on social media. Danny, do I dare ask? Okay, so
come on, you know that one.
I know. I just wanted to include him to make him feel better.
Jester, I appreciate that. I really do.
All right, Deb. So fire away. Where do we need to follow you? And I know you got a YouTube. Are you guys still throwing videos out there?
We are, and we crossed the 100 subscribers over the weekend. Woo, big channel.
Okay, so everybody listening, go over. What's the name of the YouTube?
So it is still it's Coach Deb.
Okay.
And every time we go out and hike, we try to come up with like a better name that has to do with, the hiking and the biking adventures we do. But I had a YouTube from my high school coaching, which is Coach Deb. So I just haven't changed it. And,
well, that's
and
easy.
actually,
Coach Deb, that's easy.
Yeah, and Harvey Sutton calls me Coach Deb, and I honestly just love that he calls me Coach Deb, so I kind of don't want to change
Okay,
it.
well, then that's what it is. Yeah.
That's it. It is
So
what
everybody
it's
go to YouTube, and we want to get you at least another 100 subscribers. So there you go.
We rode the Gap Trail last weekend, which is Pittsburgh to Cumberland, and I made some videos and I put that on a Gap Facebook page, and that's what got us over 100. So
Awesome.
we need the AT hikers to come out and
That's right. We need the section hikers to support each other. So go over and follow Coach Deb on YouTube. Okay, rattle off everything else where we can follow you.
I mean, all of our stuff is just our normal stuff. So my Facebook is Deb Taylor, and I tend to post a lot more than Danny does. And my Instagram.
There's a shock. We're
I know,
shocked.
right? Yeah, stunning. I don't know. Maybe he posts on some of his what is it? Stocks. Maybe his stock website or his stock.
We don't want nothing
social
to do with
media
that.
is where he posts stuff.
I only go there so I can retire sooner and hike more.
So
Well,
we can
there
hike
you
more.
go. So
Yeah, and I think the Instagram is it's either Coach Deb or Coach Deb 32. I'll have to send it to you.
I think I have Coach Deb 32
Yeah, that was
for
my high school and
Instagram. Okay,
college
so
number,
all this will be in the show notes. Everybody can go over, click, real easy, subscribe, start following these guys. By the time this comes out, you guys hopefully will have posted about your May trip from Hot Springs back to over the Roans. Down to 19E or maybe further.
Can't wait.
And then, see, we got a big question mark now. We don't know what you're doing in the fall, so we'll have to
Right.
follow along and see.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yes. So all that information will be there. Y'all's bio will be there. So let's close out. Danny, you can do this. So
He can be
let's
taught.
close out with each of, it can be done. So let's close out with each of you telling us what keeps you motivated to do this. And you cannot say Deb.
I'll be honest with you, Jester. My job is extremely stressful. They work us pretty hard. I spend 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day working. Weekends, I think about work. I can't get away from it until I get out on the trail, away from everything. And it is just a release, you know. It is peaceful. I don't have to be professional. I can just be who I am, get back to my childhood, and go play in the woods. So that's what keeps me going back out. And we have a blast when we're out there. You know, you can go hours and hours without even talking, but we're still enjoying what we're doing together. And it's just a good time. I mean, that's what keeps me coming back, is just the peace of the trail, the community of the trail, and just being able to get away from everything. So.
Excellent. Deb?
I actually really like my job.
Oh, God.
I'm a physical therapist and I'm a high school basketball coach. So most of the time I love my job. But both of us, I've always been very goal oriented. Both of us have. And that's, I think, why we were successful athletes and why we pushed ourselves into the Ironman and marathon distances. So I love the physical nature of long distance hiking or long distance sections, or, you know, even if it's just a weekend, we do high miles, because I love hiking from sunup to sundown, and the feeling of accomplishment. And we used to get that from the racing that we did, but now what I enjoy is when I get to that view that I worked so hard to get to. There's nothing like a sunset or a sunrise that I had to climb 6,000 feet to get to. And the peacefulness of that at the end of a very physical day is a huge high for me. And nobody's got me on the clock to get across the finish line. I can just enjoy it, I think, more than I did racing. So I would say that is the attraction of the trail, and then the community has been an added bonus that we didn't necessarily expect, but I absolutely love. And then honestly, I just, you know, my husband's my best friend, so there is nothing like being out there with him, and so good way to spend a day.
I love it. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally connected. And I need all the listeners out there to go over on that YouTube channel right now, Coach Deb 32 or Coach Deb, we're not sure, but it'll be in the show notes. All right, you guys, this has been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you, Jester.
Hey, Jester,
very
real
much.
quick.
Enjoy your section.
Yeah, I was about to
hike.
say, what's your next section?
Well, you know, I'm hitting the Mountains of Sea
That's
Trail this
all right.
summer, so it's in my heart and soul. I got to put my money where my mouth is on that trail now.
We think that sounds like a triathlon because you can hike it, bike it, and paddle it, right?
It does. So when you guys are done with the AT, I'll expect to see you over there,
Absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely. And, you know, Jester, you know, you're an example of community because when we were on the MST, when we were down there and I didn't have an app, I didn't have a book, I was lost. And I texted you. And
Yeah,
you know,
you did.
Yeah. And I was like, where should I go? What should I do? And you were like, bam, on it. And I had no service. And so I texted you like 3 times and was like, hey, what comes next? Where do I turn? What do I do? And you were on it. And just another example. I mean, who knows what you were probably thinking, good Lord, it's the holidays. But
You know what?
took care of us.
I remember vividly. I was like, okay, these guys, and I was sent you up to a tower, but the
Tower was gone. That's right.
it was a great view.
Well, we'll end on that note. Audience, take it as it is. Such a fun time this week chatting with Deb and Danny. It's so great to have a couple on the show that has so much passion for section hiking, the Appalachian Trail, and becoming members of the AT community. I'm also excited to cheer you on in the future when you get to my neck of the woods and get some miles in on the MST. I am so glad we've had the opportunity to meet in person, and I look forward to seeing you both again at the ALDA conference in October. Be sure to stay tuned for next week's episode when you're going to hear from Infinity. Infinity is currently retired and started her backpacking in 1974 with a trip to South Manitou Island in Michigan. She says the trip was a disaster, but was hooked and never looked back. Check her out over on Instagram at Infinity Hiking. Just a quick reminder to check out Deb and Danny's guest bio that will be directly linked to this episode on the Jester Section Hiker page, which can be found by going to hikingradionetwork.com. You can also help support in the production of this podcast and all of our shows produced by the Hiking Radio Network by leaving us a donation while you're over there as well. You will see that donate button as you are looking at today's show notes and Deb and Danny's bio. Thanks for listening, be safe out there, and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost, or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. Round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river